The Battle of Mil was a day-long struggle in and around the Dutch village of Mil along the PLRAAM line on the first day of the invasion of the Netherlands. Although the Germans eventually broke through, they suffered heavy casualties and were delayed in their advance by 1 day. Background: German forces favored an attack on Mil in North Brabant for several reasons. The eastern approach was covered by thick forest, there was no swampland in front, and once inside there would be a number of roads and nearby railway that could be used to push westward. Covering the PLRAAM line in the area was an anti-tank ditch lined with barbed wire and 47 casemates. The line was manned by 2 battalions, equipped with 4 57mm field guns. These were supported by an artillery battalion stationed west of Mil, armed with 12 84mm field guns. A company of engineers was also stationed in the area, responsible for barricading roads and prepping bridges for demolition. They were equipped with a special railway barricade referred to as asparagus. During the battle, smaller units would be ordered to reinforce the position at Mil. It was planned that they be backed up by the Dutch Third Army Corps, but this was not to be. Overall, the Dutch would utilize approximately 2,000 men. The Germans planned to spearhead the assault with 2 trains carrying the 3rd Battalion of the 481st Regiment. They were to be shortly thereafter joined by the rest of the 256th Infantry Division. However, issues with transportation over the Maas River would mean that the whole division wouldn't reach Mil until noon. They would be without their heavy artillery. Battle. The German armoured train and troop train passed through the border unopposed and arrived in the town of Zeeland at 4:30. The Dutch forces, unaware of the invasion, had been completely surprised and didn't have time to open fire. The German troops disembarked at the Zeeland train station and radioed that they had successfully penetrated the Dutch lines. Disappointed that they hadn't made contact with the Dutch, they shunted the armoured train around and sent it back to the border. Now fully aware of the situation, Dutch engineers installed the asparagus barricade over the tracks and reinforced it with several mines. Unable to stop in time, the armoured train crashed into the obstruction, derailing and sending the first carriage into the ditch. The small unit on board quickly disembarked and captured 2 away-facing casemates. They were then pinned down by rifle and machine gun fire, and retreated to train. Unable to penetrate the armor plating with their machine guns and rifles, the Dutch called in artillery support. This forced the Germans to take cover in the ditch, unable to effectively return fire. Word reached the Dutch High Command that the train had broken through near Mil, and a hussars unit was quickly dispatched to reinforce the town. Meanwhile, a company of Germans that had been dropped off in Zeeland headed northeast to flank the Dutch casemates on the defense line. They ran into the artillery battalion, which was equally surprised to see them. The Dutch quickly turned their cannons and opened fire, albeit only 1 cannon at a time. The Germans sustained heavy casualties and after about an hour decided to withdraw to nearby woods. Another company sneaked through unoccupied trenches and launched an attack on the Dutch casemates at the road between Mil and Volkel. The Dutch sustained some casualties but returned fire, forcing the Germans to withdraw to the troop train. German forces then advanced along the rail line towards Mil. Along the way they encountered 10 casemates, whose weapons were pointed southeast and were caught completely by surprise. The Germans promptly captured 9 of them. They flanked the 10th one and captured most of its crew, but 1 soldier refused to surrender and slammed the door shut. He then proceeded to fire wildly through the casemates' loopholes, forcing the Germans to back off. At 7:30 the Dutch Hussars unit found the operational German troop train south of Mil. Armed with anti-tank cannons and heavy machine guns, they quickly disabled the locomotive and boarded the train. Inside they found Dutch uniforms that had been used by commandos to take the border posts. The Hussars set the train on fire as they departed. In the north, the Germans launched an attack on a Dutch company stationed in a small forest. By 1100, after several hours of fighting with grenades and flamethrowers, they cleared the area and moved up to the railway. At noon the rest of the German force arrived, engaging the Dutch defense line. The armored train detachment, still trapped in the ditch, prepared to break out. Around 1400, the Dutch hussars appeared to reinforce the line. Some relieved the soldier who had single-handedly defended his casemate from the Germans, and then proceeded to recapture the three adjacent to him. A German recon squad appeared, but was forced to retreat under heavy fire from the hussars. Had they found the armored train soldiers and attempted to link up with them, the entire defensive line would have been compromised. Artillery support from the battalion west of Mill checked the Germans' advance. Frustrated by this lack of progress, Lieutenant General Friedrich Weber ordered an all-out assault on the line. The Germans were forced to delay, though, because their heavy artillery had still not crossed the Maas River. Instead, Weber ordered a probing assault along the railway. Some Dutch casemates were destroyed by anti-tank guns, while in the village a German machine gun nest was neutralized by a field gun. By 1800, heavy German howitzers arrived, backed up by an infantry regiment. The Germans prepared to launch their assault. 37 Junkers Ju-88 attacked the northern portion of the defense line, but failed to kill any Dutch soldiers or destroy any casemates. The infantry then launched its attack, and heavy fighting ensued. By 2200 the Germans had established a wide gap in the PLRAAM line. As the Dutch retreated, the Germans linked up with the armoured train unit, who they at first misidentified as Dutch soldiers. Skirmishes in and around Mill lasted until the early hours of the 11th of May, while heavier fighting continued in the north. Aftermath. Over the course of the fighting, the Dutch suffered 30 killed and 50 wounded. In the village, 9 civilians were killed. While figures for the Germans are incomplete, it is estimated that they sustained over 500 casualties. The Dutch defense had allowed for the escape of larger forces further into Fortress Holland, and delayed the Germans' progress by 1 day. But with the PLRAAM line breached, they could now advance into the country.